Doctor, I heard strange noises. Are you okay?
Let's just say that the evil brought into this house has been destroyed forever.
The super shock sensation of all time, all together, all terrific, bringing all new thrills, horror upon horror in the House of Dracula. Welcome back to another episode of Entertainment Rebooted, specifically a new episode of Cinema Revisited, the Universal Monster Movies. I am, of course, joined by my esteemed co-host, DJ. Say hello, DJ.
Hello, weirdo.
Anyway, as you guys know, we like watching the classic Universal Monster movies, and we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the iconic. Then we talk about what we might do if we had to make a movie of similar style for a modern audience. But before we do any of that, we like to give you guys the plot summary. And boy howdy, is it a heck of a plot for none other than 1945's The House of Dracula. Take it away, DJ.
This is a better version of the House of Frankenstein.
It is actually like a genuinely interesting film.
Okay, so this film does actually. What's funny enough is it starts with Dracula just like the other one did. This movie feels like also Frankenstein didn't go as well as we thought. Let's remake it, but better. But also this is continues after that and acknowledge that. And how are these things alive? Who cares?
We just need to find a way to throw it all together, but make it make sense this time.
The
people complain that Dracula only showed up for 15 minutes of our 30-minute movie.
Dracula gets a better arc, and him and the Wolfman show up a little bit more in it. Frankenstein is even less in this film. Frankenstein's monster is less in this film than the last one, but he plays in it a little bit more. Funny enough, he's in it less, but he plays a more integral part. Dracula...
It's well put together.
Yeah.
I think that Frankenstein at this point has been kind of overused. So actually having him be the one monster that only shows up for a little bit of the time works really well for this film.
Yeah. So the main plot is Dracula shows up to Dr. Edelman. He's a renowned scientist and doctor that has helped people with strange conditions, and he wants to get cured. And he starts going to him for treatments. Meanwhile, the Wolfman shows up asking for help as well and turns into a Wolfman in a jail cell in front of the doctor, so he believes him and takes him in. There's a little bit of the doctor doesn't quite believe in it, but then he realizes that this is actually Dracula, the real Dracula. This is the Wolfman. These are real things. And he works on curing them. Dracula starts musing with one of the assistants, the nurses and assistants at the doctor.
One of which is a hunchback that he has promised he also will cure.
Yes. The other one has a history with Dracula, has met him before. And he works on curing them. The Wolfman doesn't think he's going to get cured. He throws himself off a cliff. Doctor goes to save him, finds Frankenstein's monster in the cave while he's down there, and then goes to try and revive him and gets talked down by the hunchback assistant to no longer do it.
Because the point of science is actually to benefit their fellow man, not necessarily their scientific curiosity.
Right.
It was actually a pretty interesting moment.
It was actually a really good moment, too, because he actually turns it down and decides not to do it.
Because she made a very good point.
Yep. And then he does end up curing the Wolfman, but not before he has to kill Dracula. That's actually the part that gets interesting. He's on the verge of curing the Wolfman. Dracula ends up trying to attack the assistant and take her. He kills Dracula, but before he's able to take him out, Dracula, on one of the transfusion, puts his blood back into him.
Yeah, so the way that he was going to cure Dracula was he was going to insert an antibody into his own bloodstream, and then through transfusion, insert essentially this antibody through blood into Dracula to cure his curse or his disease.
Yes.
So they did one of these transfusions. He forces the second one prematurely because Dracula has made his move on his non-hunchback assistant.
Yes. And so in order to fix the problem that he considers an issue, Dracula reverses the blood in order to taint the doctor. Doctor ends up taking out Dracula, but he starts to go mad. And he decides he's going to fix the hunchback, but she says, no, fix Talbot first. So he does. He cures Talbot, but then he goes mad and then starts killing people, and the town comes after him as an investigation. They obviously think Talbot did it because he was the policeman saw him turn into Wolfman and knows that he can do it, and he's murderous. But they do end up discovering that it was actually Talbot who did it and come after him.
Well, not Talbot, the doctor.
I'm sorry, the doctor.
They find the doctor's
yeah, they find his so they realize it's him.
So.
They come after him, and so does the townspeople. And while they're coming after him, he starts reviving Frankenstein's monster again, and the Hunchback girl comes to confront him. He kills her. Frankenstein's monster comes up. Talbot kills the mad doctor because he did ask him to. So he ends up killing him. And then Frankenstein's monster attacks, and Talbot ends up pushing over the chemical pile that lights a fire. And
the entire lab goes up in a blaze.
Yep. And he warns all the townspeople that come to attack, hey, back up, get out of the house. Frankenstein's monster is here. And then it just ends like there with the fire. But he's cured and with the other and everything now, and it ends kind of like a lot of Universal Monster films. It's the very second the tension is over, it just stops.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's the movie.
All right. So there you have it. Now let's get into the good, the bad, the ugly, and the iconic. DJ, what is good about 1945's House of Dracula?
It has a cohesive plot that actually works together, which is kind of a low bar, but I'm comparing directly to the previous film that we saw in the series, The House of Frankenstein. It takes a lot of what that did and does it better. It's smoother, and it does a really good job of blending the monsters together. Dracula and the Wolfman actually get some on screen time with each other. In the last one, the Wolfman and Frankenstein get a little bit of on-scene together, but not much. And this one, he gets the same amount of on-scene time between those two monsters as the last one, but a lot more between him and Dracula. Because he comes in and they don't really interact with each other, though. That's the only that's kind of bad about it. Is honestly, I think that would be my bad too. Is my good is that they get the characters in really well. They get interactions. The bad is they still don't really interact with each other much. The Mad Doctor does. The Mad Doctor interacts with all of them, but there's no real interaction between the Wolfman and Dracula, especially in their monster forms. That would have been kind of fun to see them, like, when they call Talbot. I swear, there's a scene where like, get Talbot. He was gonna come in and like go all Wolfman on Dracula. That would have been really cool. That's like the only thing I really. But Talbot did get to fight. Frankenstein's monster, which was kind of cool, but not for very long. But I mean, the Universal monster films aren't about like the high action part of the movies. It's really about the horror part.
Well, it's about the dialogue and it's about the situation.
Yeah, and so I don't ever fault it for that. I just would have liked to have seen Talbot and Dracula, like maybe a confrontation between them, even if it wasn't in monster form, like kind of like we got with Van Helsing. Like,
well, maybe even like
one of the greatest scenes in Universal monster films, period, is the dialogue and scene between Van Helsing and Dracula, where there's just like, there's no battling, there's no fighting. It's just this intense exchange of like words and ideas. It's a mental spar, and it's really good. Something like that between Wolfman and that would have been good. So that's why Two-Face good and bad is a better way to use the monster, better pacing. It was a good film, but it would have been cool to see more interactions between the monsters.
All right, I guess if I'm going to do good and bad. All right, so good. House of Dracula. All right. I'll say the good is that it is interesting how all the characters do kind of end up together. But mainly in the sense of like Dracula and the Wolfman. So it's interesting that Dracula comes to this doctor posing himself as if he's trying to be cured of his immortality.
That's actually, yeah, that is never really clear if he actually wanted to be cured or if he just used an excuse or if he actually wanted to be cured and then got distracted by an old flame. I'm not sure which it is, and I guess it doesn't really matter, but it's an interesting case.
Yeah, it's kind of left up to interpretation, but the way that I interpret it is that he went to the doctor posing that he was trying to be cured. He kind of knew that he would never be cured. Like, he's been around for centuries. He probably understands, like, the benefits of his condition. He probably wouldn't be giving it up. But it's interesting because at the beginning, even when we get introduced to the flame, the assistant that he had met previously before she became an assistant, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, so he's giving up this curse and he sees it as a curse for love. Maybe like he wants to be human. He wants to experience actual love. But the longer that you actually spend time with Dracula and the more that you actually pay attention to the little details, like for instance, she had mentioned to Dracula before she left that she was going to be an assistant with this person.
Yes.
And that he was working on.
Oh, that's true. She did. Yes.
So he could have just taken that and played it to be like, okay, this is a way for me to get to the doctor and to be able to get the girl and be around the girl enough that I can eventually get her to essentially come home and give up her life for me. So the fact that he's kind of playing this off and we as the audience don't really see like the full extent of what he means until the main climax of the film, the first climax of the film. This film has 2 climaxes. And then we see Lawrence Talbot show up for the guy who is this like miracle person curing doctor, which makes sense for his character because he is always seeking a cure. It seems like no matter what he does, no matter where he goes, he cannot be cured and he cannot die. If we're to believe that this is actually like in sequence with the rest of the movies, he was shot and killed 3 separate times and he always comes back.
Right.
So he's desperate for a cure because he just can't die.
Right.
The bad, however, ties into this as well, since we like to do that. The bad is that I think Frankenstein's monster is 100% thrown in. And the fact that the way that they threw Frankenstein's monster into the movie confuses a lot of different things. We're already kind of confused by the fact that Dracula died, exposed to the sun, vanquished forever, outside of his coffin in the last movie, House of Frankenstein. We also know that Larry Talbot died, gunshot wound, silver from the person that he loved. That was what was said to be like the end of the curse. That's the only way that you can kill them. He's also has died. And he doesn't mention anything from the previous film. Neither does Dracula mention anything from the previous film. However, when we get introduced to Frankenstein's monster in the cave of this castle, which is not the same castle or town or area that House of Frankenstein took place in, they still try to throw enough details into it to be like, well, of course, he was taken down by the quicksands and yada yada.
Well,
yada.
that even literally said that must be the skeleton of Doctor.
Yeah.
The villain from the last one.
Right. So like they even say that, but then it's like, okay, so Larry.
And it
went
said
back
it made
to
its way here, and I'm like, made its way here how? Like sunk, like the quicksand just happens to lead to this castle.
Well, you see, it's a sinkhole. This is how the Germans made it so quickly across Europe, using the quicksand sinkholes.
Oh,
it wasn't the Blitzkrieg; it was the sinkhole Krieg.
It's weird because they and he says many years ago too, so it's like it's not clear how long it's been. But like that's one of the things about these movies that they give just enough detail that it's a sequel, but it's also kind of like a reboot at the same time. It's weird. And it's not, it's been done before.
Yeah.
And it's been done in modern films where they like make a sequel to a film but kind of pretend like the last one didn't happen. The Incredible Hulk.
But exactly. But the thing is that this film, like when they introduced Frankenstein, one, he's thrown in. He feels the most thrown into the movie.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is it completely breaks the continuity between the previous film and this film. If it's going to be, shared universe and it's actually playing off of it. Because the thing is, this movie does work well, even with Larry Talbot being reintroduced. if you just kind of ignore that House of Frankenstein happened at all. Because Larry has always been searching for a cure. That's always, anytime that we're introduced to his character, he's either trying to find a way to destroy himself or cure himself.
Right.
So the fact that he would go to this place does make sense. And also with how weak House of Frankenstein was, it would make sense that they would just kind of ignore that it happened. But when they introduce Frankenstein with the with the skeletal remains of the previous villain, kind of throws all that out the window.
Yeah.
So how about ugly, DJ? What's ugly about House of Frankenstein or House of Dracula?
My ugly is actually closer to your bad. My ugly in this film is the continuity issues. One of the things that a lot of these films have started to suffer from greatly is continuity. Like, you're trying to make this a sequel, an interquel of different monsters from different eras, but there's no continuity in their character work. The main issue, the last one, Dracula was left in the exact state he was when Van Helsing took him out.
Mm-hmm.
The stake was still in him.
Right.
And he even says that he found him in the basement of that place from the film Dracula. Like, that's where it came from. That is a clear continuity connection that makes sense. One of the things the House of Frankenstein did do well is it kept continuity intact.
Yeah.
This one makes a better story and it has a cleaner plot, but the continuity is just chucked out the window. Dracula is just back somehow. He was sunlighted into a skeleton, and he sunlights into a skeleton in here, and he goes, he's gone forever, never return again. I was like, well, he was sunlighted in the last one. Like, what does that mean? How does that mean he won't come back? And yeah, Frankenstein's monster being transported across the universe somehow to this sand pit that happened to be here. It is shoehorned in hardcore. It's like they wanted to do a reboot, but they didn't quite fully reboot it. They just made it a reboot sequel. It's really weird. Like, they are simultaneously trying to pretend like stuff didn't happen or doesn't have to make sense while trying to put links together at the same time. You can't, that doesn't work. Like, it just throws off everything. It's very uncanny. And at first, when I first watched the film with Dracula just walking around, it like doesn't even talk about it. It did feel like they were just going to throw the last film out the window.
Yeah.
Until they mentioned the whole thing from the last one. Oh, here's Frankenstein's monster with the skeleton of the doctor. And I'm like, I don't. Now the Dracula thing worked for me until this, and now I'm like, well, that is the same. That is the Dracula from the previous movie. Then how is he still alive? How is any of this happening? That's ugly. That's like some real immersion breaking stuff.
Complete wrench.
The film is fun to watch. If you watch this film without having seen House of Frankenstein, it probably would have worked fine. Because, yeah, they mentioned, oh, that's the doctor, but you didn't see the movie, so you didn't know where he left from. But knowing all of what happens in that one just blows this one up. Completely. That's my ugly. Straight up.
Yeah, I guess that it does kind of lean more into like an ugly. It is kind of like completely and totally wrecking of the entire film. Because the other thing too is that the way that you're introduced to Dracula, even you start kind of questioning. You're like, okay, so he died, he burned up in the sun. Somehow he crawled back into his coffin without us realizing it. Got picked up, went to a completely different area, posed as a completely different person, as this barren figure, and met this girl. Got infatuated with her and came up with this whole plan to go back to the place that he was very close to begin with. Yeah, so it's like it does actually lean more into
everything
ugly.
that happens in the movie is fine, but the backstory is just obnoxious.
Yeah, so I guess I'll backtrack. I'll go ahead and I'll just, that continuity thing is ugly, so I'll backtrack and I'll just say it bad. You know, since that actually probably is actually really the worst part of the movie. Like, more that I think about it, that is the worst part of this movie. That is the thing I would definitely warn people about, is like, you're going to be a little confused about the continuity if you're going to try to keep it with the House of Frankenstein.
Yes.
So I guess the bad. See, now I got to think about something that's like,
I think that was fine for your bad.
well, I don't have an ugly then I don't have something that's actually worse than that is the issue. Because that is actually the most annoying part of that movie. Okay, bad. I guess the
I mean, that was a pretty good bad. Just have it be your bad and your ugly. Then I mean,
it is so bad that it covered both categories.
I mean,
yeah, we'll go with it.
I mean, you felt if you felt this strongly about it, that's the thing. Like you came out on your bad. I'm like, no, that's all I got.
Yeah. No, that's like it's the thing about this movie that is absolutely awful. I mean, I could just say like maybe some little nitpicks and things like that. But at the same time, it's like, do I make a nitpick about some of the cheesy dialogue? Well, not really, because the dialogue in this film was actually pretty solid. There were a lot of really good sound bits, a lot of decent quotes.
There's some really good quotes. This is actually the first movie, I think, since some of the Invisible Man ones where I got like real goosebumps in some of the quotes that they said. Like, or the original Frankenstein. Because one of the things about the original Frankenstein is there were some very cerebral, thought-provoking quotes in that movie. Like, especially the themes of the film in general. But, like, what he said was, like, what have I done? Or is, like, should man have this kind of power? Like, there's really good lines in that. And, like, Invisible Man, where he starts to go crazy, and he does the even the moon fears me thing.
Yeah, the whole monologue. Even the moon.
Like this had some quotes that felt like that.
Well, and also it's interesting to see. So I guess I can move into iconic. Iconic would probably be some of the dialogue bits. The iconic is that the characters, the way that they work together and the way that they talk together actually works very well. You have some interesting quotes and memorable quotes of dialogue. It's probably one of the first films in a long time that has memorable quotes of dialogue where it's not even just like iconic because it's like campy or corny. You literally have like, you know, the hunchback assistant literally talks the scientist down from reviving Frankenstein's monster, which has never happened. Anytime a scientist comes within 5 feet of Frankenstein's monster, his whole thing is not only am I going to revive it, I'm going to improve it. I'm going to actually make Frankenstein's vision.
That is a strong
better.
iconic. It's the first time that they didn't do it and someone actually succeeded in talking them down.
Yeah. So that dialogue is very interesting. It's fascinating the subtle the subtle storytelling. I guess the storytelling in general is more iconic. The subtle like subliminal messaging put into some of the scenes where it's like when the assistant that Dracula is after is truly scared, she reaches instinctively for God. She reaches for her faith because she is scared, and she says it like she's like, I'm scared, I'm terrified, and she reaches for her cross. That's very interesting because it's like she got pushed to the point where she literally was essentially throwing out a prayer, a hope and a prayer.
Right.
And then you have Dracula then trying to get her to get rid of her cross, to throw that away, her final hope, because it was the only thing that could have possibly stopped him.
Right.
And he succeeds in doing that at the last moment. Then you have the whole scene where the doctor starts to become a vampire, and the cat, who reacted very negatively towards Dracula, reacts negatively towards him for the first time.
That was a good foreshadowing right there.
Right. And then later on, you get the whole scene where you see his thought process, and he's not doing a monologue. He's not explaining what's happening. But what you see happening is he starts looking at it and goes, well, I'm going to revive Frankenstein's monster. I'm going to start creating havoc. I'm going to start creating and murdering things. And you see a scene where it's him side by side, his sane self and his new vampiric insane self. And the sane one's trying to talk him out of it. And then you see the hunchback assistant being cured, which is what the good side had hoped for. But then she goes in to reach and murder somebody. So ultimately, it's like, I'm going to get Frankenstein's monster and wreak havoc. But at the same time, I could actually just take this good idea I had of curing the hunchback assistant and turning her into the monster.
Right.
But the thing is, like, you have very good dialogue bits, you have very good character moments, and you have this subtle storytelling through imagery and things like that. So I would just say, like, the storytelling and the story itself is actually fairly iconic. It's a very interesting story. Very interesting story, and it's told in 67 minutes, which is insane.
A lot happened, just like Frankenstein. It was shorter, but a lot happens in that movie. A lot happens in this one.
Yeah.
And it keeps going, even though it was shorter. It felt long because so much happens in such a short amount of time.
Yeah. All right. How about you? What's iconic?
They cured Talbot.
Yeah.
For the first time in all of the movies, they actually cured. Well, that's not true. In one of them, in one or two of them, they did cure the Invisible Man issue later on. So that's been done before. But specifically, the Wolfman, Talbot, he's been okay. Hold on, he was boss. How long ago was it that he was turned into the Wolfman? This was like a while.
43.
Ago.
1943.
The Wolfman, 1941.
41. Okay.
So
you need to bring your mic down. I think that they're probably not going to be able to hear you.
Sorry. Okay, so 1941. Wolfman was in 1941. We are at House of Dracula in 1945. So only 4 years, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 films have happened in the universe at that time.
Oh my gosh, we've gone through a whole year.
Yeah, the Wolfman, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and then the House of Frankenstein, all had Talbot as the Wolfman, him wanting to get cured, going to get cured, all of that. They finally do it in this movie. He actually finally gets cured of the Wolfman, and he gets his happy ending. And all of the other films we watched like the lead male and lead female characters walk off into the sunset as like the monsters burning, their families dying, all of these different things, like especially in like the Mummy films. And
the Mummy films usually have that darker ending, yeah.
But this one is really cool specifically because they cure him, but also in the Wolfman, the final scene is the girl that he loved with the guy that she loved. Like standing off, like in the end, as his father kills him, the Wolfman's father kills him.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like that's how it ends, and in this one, he finally gets his happy ending.
Yep.
And so it was just, yeah, it was that's iconic, man. Like they finally gave this character's been around for a while his ending to do. So that's mine. That's it. Like it's just that mix of him getting what he finally wanted, but also that kind of like call back to the original.
And it's also a satisfying conclusion for the character. His long and suffering filled journey, his terrible journey,
his long and arduous journey. Yeah, that's it for me, man.
All right. So there you have it, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the iconic. We like to try to pose the question, if we were given the ability or the task to modernize this film, what would we do? What kind of story would we tell? Similar characters, similar story vein. What would you do? Let's say Universal came down and said, we're thinking about making a film that's kind of like House of Dracula. How would you make this for a modern audience?
You know, I see a lot of this film, now that we've watched through a lot of this stuff, the Van Helsing film by, who was it that it was?
Stephen Sommers.
Thank you, Stephen Sommers, who did the Mummy films. The Van Helsing film, there's a lot of like influence from this on that. Essentially,
Van Helsing is House of Dracula made for an early 2000s audience.
Basically, that's what this is. Like, it takes a lot of homage from other films too, but this is really close to that. Like the scientific stuff, like bringing in the Wolfman and the Dracula, the same thing. Honestly, if this was for modern audience, now this actually something I applaud the classic films for is, like you said, and we've said here already, they're very cerebral. The original Dracula doesn't have like fight scenes and action scenes. It's this monologue and dialogue between characters, and this one captures that really well. A lot of the Frankenstein films were like that. A lot of the original classic Universal films were true horror with heavy dialogue and thought, and very stage play like storytelling methods. That's what they were. Modern audiences tend to like more action and more intrigue and stuff like that, but I kind of like these for that thing. I honestly kind of wish there was a little bit more of this. Nosferatu, which we watched in theater, actually kind of gets close to this.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of action in that one too, but it does have a lot of the dialogue and intrigue.
A lot of the horror elements are brought about by the uneasiness of the environment and the circumstances. Yeah. It's a lot more of the terror in the oddness of the count, as compared to the actual horror of the action. If
I were going to remake this, I would honestly leave a lot untouched. I would definitely tie it better into the previous one, maybe give some explanation of why Dracula is back, or just straight ignore the last film. That would be a really good change to make. Give him a little more backstory and understanding of where he's at, and give more interactions between the characters. I would like to see Frankenstein's monster specifically, and Wolfman and Dracula interact a little more. Talbot interacts with both of them briefly, but Dracula and Frankenstein don't ever mix. I would like to get them more mixing. I would like to get a fight going between Dracula and the Wolfman. And I don't necessarily mean, as much as modern artists love the action fight, I would like to do a more cerebral fight akin to the original Dracula film, where those two have like a battle of wits. And then towards the end of the film, that battle of wits turns into a battle of might. I would like to see them fight each other as Talbot and Dracula, and then as the vampire and the werewolf. That is something that the specific reason I brought up Van Helsing's thing is because Van Helsing does that. There is a scene where Dracula and Van Helsing have a argument and are talking to each other in a sophisticated way, and they go off back and forth, and the dialogue is very cerebral and intelligent and thinking. And then towards the end of the film, they just fight as monsters. And that works really well. It shows them fighting as like with their senses intact, and then fighting as instinctual beasts and the monsters that they are. That would have been really cool to do. That's what I would like to do with Talbot and Dracula. Have them have a battle of wits and then fight as monsters later on. And then have Dracula defeated, and then he gets cured. And then he has to face Frankenstein's monster as a normal human. And I would drag that scene out a little bit more, that battle out a little bit more, like you really feel like Talbot may not actually get his happy ending. Finally gets healed, you don't think he's going to make it, and then he gets out in the end. That's how I would do it.
All right.
And now John will take a completely different take and destroy the entire movie and start over again.
So this is how I would do it. I open up, black and white, Transylvania. An angry mob with fiery torches storms Castle Frankenstein.
Dracula tells him to hurry.
Success!
And then they create the monster. And then he kills Frankenstein. And Frankenstein goes, "Why?" And then the house collapses. And there's absinthe everywhere.
Fast forward 2 years, London, England. That's right, ladies and gentlemen.
2000 was it 2004's
Van
Helsing.
That is
Stephen Sommers.
As the modern take on
it really is.
It is. Honestly, so this one isn't. I'll just be honest. Like, just having the 2 minutes to think about it. Just warning you right now, this isn't going to be like my best one that I put forward. But one thing that I could see an attempt being made, and it could be interesting if, more time to develop this. But a lot of horror lately with Universal, they try to kind of tie in some modern thinking and some modern talking points and things like that. one of the things that could be interesting is having a horror movie where you have a doctor who is trying to see the best in all of the monsters, but also trying to cure them and trying to figure out how to help them, not just medicinally, but maybe cognitively.
Right.
Perhaps it's not necessarily that Dracula is evil. He's just kind of put himself into this mind space of the monster. And if he breaks himself out of that way of thinking, he could potentially be better. And I could see definitely Dracula trying to play somebody to be like, yeah, I'm actually more interested in like the assistant than you, and I'm just going to play you so I can get to your assistant or something. But maybe something along those lines. I could see that being something that would be attempted with a modern audience, like be more of like actually get into
like dangerously empathetic.
Yeah, like kind of like the dangers of empathy, and some of the things where we really do have this mentality culturally where we do try to see the best in everybody, and it's just somebody's misunderstood. They're not given the right chance. They're not given the right treatment. They're not given the right care. We look at these things as monsters. You know, we look at Frankenstein's monster as that, a monster, as compared to a creature that didn't choose to be where he was. So you could see that where you might have a house full of monsters where the only person who's genuinely looking for help is the one that everybody's the most afraid of, namely the Wolfman.
Right.
You could also play into the fact that one thing that I've always been kind of interested in horror specifically is that people have generally favorable views towards vampires. They think that they're sleek, they think that they're sexy, they think they're interesting,
Right.
and they usually look at werewolves as just brutish monsters. Whereas I would kind of play into the fact that yes, the werewolf has the most potential for violence, and he is the most off-putting and terrifying of the creatures because it could literally be anyone, and then he turns into a werewolf and he has no control over himself. However, I think that what would be interesting is if we took people's kind of view of vampires and was like, well, they're still kind of human, they're suave, they're sexy, they're interesting, they're unique, and they can definitely, you know, just like they're very smooth, and perhaps you could potentially reason with them, kind of thing, and being like, no, actually, like the most animalistic and cruel thing is actually a vampire because it does look the most interesting, but they're cold and they're dead.
Right.
So I've always thought that that would be kind of interesting, where it's like actually the one person that can help them is Larry, but they rush his Larry Talbot, the Wolfman.
Yeah.
Perhaps they rush his treatment, and instead of just trying to understand him and empathize with him, they view him as this psychotic killer who kills everybody that he gets close to, and so they rush his treatment. But he was literally kind of the only threat to Dracula, and perhaps Dracula is manipulating the entire situation where he's like, oh, I've had centuries to think about it, and all I have left are, you know, I have 600 years and 6,000 regrets, kind of thing. And he comes off as the most interesting. Maybe he puts together the house, and it's like, no, he's actually trying to play people, drive the doctor insane to actually, or he's trying to tempt the doctor, as many doctors have been tempted, by bringing Frankenstein within his realm, to where it's like every doctor that's been exposed to Frankenstein's monster before has been tempted to perfect it, and he tries to play it off, but the hunchback lady, you know, his assistant, talks him out of it. And maybe the entire point of House of Dracula is that they're in this house put together by Dracula, and we started off with Dracula's trying to bring an end to monsters, and he's trying to cure them. He's trying to figure out how can we truly have peace and harmony with the humans. But then it turns out that it's like, no, actually, Dracula just wants the werewolf gone because he's his greatest threat. And yeah, if he has Frankenstein under his thumb and this mad doctor under his thumb, there's nothing that can stop him.
He's eliminating enemies or threats to himself.
Yeah, maybe something like that.
That was actually in Stephen Sommers' Van Helsing, Dracula's weakness was the werewolf.
Mhm.
That was the only thing that could kill him. And that's why he kept a cure for it, because he wanted to be able. It made sense why he had one. We don't know why I made it, but he had a cure for it in case they ever turned on him. He could change the back so he could eliminate the threat.
It made sense. It made sense why he had it. What didn't make sense is why he told the exposition sickle that he had it.
Right.
Why would he tell the exposition sickle?
But it was the
exposition sickle.
It's a very interesting thing that he had control over werewolves. He could control them, but had a cure just in case they got a little too uppity. Like that was a clever thing, and this film almost gets to that point, but it never quite grazed it. It was an interesting point. That would have been fun to really play with. I would have loved to see them do something with that.
Yeah, but yeah, this one's just kind of hard for me to be like, yeah, let's like seriously remake it, because there is a part of me that's just like, if you just made Van Helsing just a little like make a little bit more sense, then that is modern day House of Dracula. And I really do wish that they would just try to remake a film like Van Helsing, but with it making a lot more sense, not relying so much on
even to the point of getting like the weird continuity errors, because like there's a big point in that film where Dracula's like in this castle where he can't get out of because of the mirror thing, but then he's in a whole nother city in Vienna, like in a house full of vampires, and you're like, wait, if he can't, how did he get? What? I don't. And this film happens that same problem where like they're more focused on like the fun and the film, that they forget that you actually have to make sense out of like how people are doing things. So there's a good parallel there.
Yeah.
Not only did it take cues from like the monsters and stuff, but it also took cues in the bad way to do continuity.
I really think that what happened with Van Helsing is Steven Sommers had this really great idea, and the thing is that he pitched an idea and Universal went and said, awesome, we're filming in 2 weeks, but I just have an outline. Some of the things don't make sense. Bro, I don't care. It's going to be monsters fighting. People aren't, but it's not that kind of movie. They'll forgive it. You made The Mummy. The Mummy made no sense, even though it actually really did.
It actually makes quite a bit of sense. It's just campy, but I love it.
It's campy on purpose.
Yes.
See, like, The Mummy 1999's The Mummy is just a great film.
I think it's actually interesting too, because we watched the Universal film, started with Dracula, went to Frankenstein, and then The Mummy. Those were like the first three.
Yep.
And Steven Sommers did The Mummy and then did Dracula and Frankenstein in a movie together with Van Helsing. So it was kind of fun.
Well, and the Wolfman.
And the Wolfman and Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. But yeah, that was that film is actually what kind of got me into like the Universal monsters. That was like I watched the Mummy, the two Mummy films, and then that one.
Yep.
And I actually think I might have seen Van Helsing before I saw the second Mummy film. Actually, I think I saw them out of order.
Yeah, they all came out about the same time, 1999, 2001, 2004.
Yeah, it was a bit rough, but I think I saw the second Mummy film after Van Helsing. I saw Van Helsing in theaters. So it was just like a very interesting, like, I didn't even know that was made by the same guy. I had no idea that was all Steven Sommers. That was kind of what got me into it, and watching the classic films and being able to like see where that came from has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's to be honest, this has been like my favorite series that we've done on the channel. Honestly, like actually going through and watching all these things. Obviously, like it kind of spawned all of the other shows that we're doing, but honestly, this series just has like a special place in my heart. I've really enjoyed going through all of these films because every single one of them has something interesting to talk about. I can see why there are so many people who, to this day, are huge fans of the classic Universal monster movies.
There's really good films in here, and even the worst of them are pretty good. Like, there's fun. As much as we picked at them, like,
I think there's only 2 films that we've seen in the series so far that I probably will never watch again. Honestly, because even some of the
Werewolf
really
of
campy
London,
bad ones,
that one was pretty rough. That one was pretty rough.
Yeah.
The Invisible Woman was weird, but it was funny. It was like enjoyable. It just didn't fit the theme, but I didn't think it was bad. And then I know
The Invisible Man's Revenge is
Yeah.
the one that I
that one was
hated.
that one wasn't very good. Honestly, all the rest of them are pretty good.
And even if they're not that great, there's still ones that I would be like, you know, if I have kids in October, I would probably show them some of the campier ones. Because they're not going to care about all the little details. It's just going to be like a fun monster.
Well, I mean,
movie.
the first four, Dracula, Frankenstein, Mummy, and Invisible Man, are just solid.
They're just good movies.
Those are just really good. And Bride of Frankenstein was really good. Werewolf of London was how like kind of got there, but
It was
really
the outlier.
Yeah, it was
for
the
a long
outlier.
time.
I remember watching that and we were like, ugh, that wasn't very good. And Dracula's Daughter was like, eh. And then Son of Frankenstein, pretty good. And it just from there, it just kind of goes all over the place.
Yeah. Up until the Wolfman. Wolfman, I think, is like peak Universal. Not like the best one, but what I mean is like after Wolfman, the quality really got shot. I think after Wolfman, there's
Yeah,
not
Ghost
really
of
another
Frankenstein
movie.
was okay, but it was weird. Visible Agent was kind of campy, but okay.
It was fun. It's from
Mummy's Tomb was good. Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. That one was okay, but it felt like two separate films.
Well, it was also really janky and
Yeah,
the
Phantom
fact
of the
that-
Opera was
yeah.
good, except for one major plot hole. Son of Dracula was okay. Visible Man's Revenge was not
Bad.
great. Mummy's Ghost was okay. House of Frankenstein we talked about is just like two separate films that didn't feel very jointed. Mummy's Curse actually I really liked.
But it has a lot of stuff in it that was very much messy.
Yeah, and then House of Dracula. Yeah, so you're right. Like after Wolfman was like the last of the films was like solid. Dracula's Daughter and Werewolf of London were kind of the lumpy ones, but they all were pretty good overall. It just got weird after that, but none of them were bad, just weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, since we're talking about all the Universal monster movies that we've seen so far, just a very quick plug. We're not sponsored by this or anything like that. We just really do like to kind of give a shout out. We are watching through the Universal Classic Monsters Complete Film Collection. It is a Blu-ray collection that Universal made for the 100th anniversary of the studios. It is Blu-ray editions of all of the classic Universal monster movies, like the major monster movies. They have been redigitized. They are absolutely gorgeous, and for the most part, the sound is redone as well, and it's very good. So if you want to follow along with us with this box set, highly recommend it. It's very good. You could probably still find it on Amazon. Otherwise, do you have any final thoughts or anything?
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay, thank you so much for watching this production of Entertainment Rebooted, Cinema Revisited, the classic Universal Monster movies. And we would like to take a moment to thank the viewers like you. Thank you. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and share us with your friends. If you like our sense of humor and you like following these movies, your friends probably do too. So they would probably appreciate it. Otherwise, we'll see you guys in the next video.
Thanks for watching.